The Yiddish word chutzpah, which means shameless audacity and impudence, is the word that came to my mind when I recently read the Democratic National Committee official website section titled Our History. In the very first line it reads, quote, "For more than 200 years, our party has led the fight for civil rights." I mean, I can't help but laugh, guys. Are you kidding me? No, you heard me right. I'm not joking here. According to the Democratic Party, they have led the fight for civil rights for more than 200 years. While this is a laughable claim based on lies, it is unfortunately a big lie that has deceived far too many Americans for far too many years and is an insult to Americans of all colors who have sacrificed to end slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, and the systemic institutionalized racism created by the Democratic Party a long time ago. The Democratic Party was behind every single pro-slavery legislation from 1820 up to the 1861 Civil War, which they started to preserve slavery. The Democrat Party was behind every single piece of Jim Crow legislation after the Civil War and well into the 1960s. Over and over, we have heard Democrat politicians and pundits declare the righteousness of their 200 years of fighting for civil rights while attacking Republicans, conservatives, and libertarians as bigots, racists, and white supremacists. And I'm tired of it. The Democratic Party has very cleverly endorsed a so-called Republican Southern strategy narrative where President Nixon's plan was to have all the redneck racist Southern Democrats transform into redneck racist Republicans. This is absolute hogwash. Dinesh D'Souza has recently published his book, Death of the Nation, number 5, by the way, right now, New York Times bestseller list, and he writes this, quote, "The South as a whole became Republican during the 1980s and 90s. This had nothing to do with Nixon. It was because of Ronald Reagan and former House Speaker Newt Gingrich's contract with America. The conservative appeal to patriotism, anti-communism, free markets, pro-life, and Christianity has far more to do with the South's movement into the GOP camp than anything related to race," end quote. In other words, what really happened has nothing to do with racism, but everything to do with changing values. The South has changed profoundly in many, many positive ways. The racism that once defined it doesn't exist anymore. Southern values today are conservative ones: pro-gun, pro-life, equality in the workplace, and limited government based on local sovereignty. The great cities of Atlanta, Georgia, Nashville, Tennessee, Charleston, South Carolina, among many, many more, have resoundingly rejected the old Democrat Jim Crow racism and wholeheartedly embraced conservative civil rights values based on equality for all. One example out of thousands is in South Carolina, where Southern whites are far more likely to vote for a black senator, Tim Scott, than white liberals. 55 years ago, on August 28, 1963, the great American Martin Luther King gave his wonderful I Have a Dream speech. It's one of the greatest speeches in American history, and in that speech, Reverend King proclaimed,
"When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness."
Isn't it time the Democrats stop with their racial identity politics, with their fabricated charges of Republican racism every time they disagree with their policies? Isn't it time for Democrats to embrace the dream of our King Jesus, to love one another? And may I make a suggestion, people? Call the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. Their number is 202-863-8000. 202-863-8000, and very politely ask them to change their bogus history. I'm Dr. Jake Jacobs, and we'll see you next time on One Nation.